Today's conversation is about content inventory and audit process. So Femi, can you tell us what is content inventory and audit?
Yeah, so when you talk about content inventory and audit, it's important to look at it beyond just the website. So a lot of conversations around content audits is just SEO focus. That is not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is a list. When you talk about content inventory, a list of all your content. And this include text content, image content, and video content. Companies and marketers make the mistake when they hear content, they just think you're talking about text alone. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, and it's primarily video content. That is a content. And a lot of organizations tilt heavily towards text content. So when you're talking about content inventory, you're looking at all your image assets that you use for offline advertising, that you use if you have a brick and mortar store, all those images, every content that you use offline. And then from a website standpoint, all the content that is on your website. And then from an email and direct marketing perspective, then you're looking at all the content that you have. So all this content, you coming together with different stakeholders, like the person responsible for offline advertising or asset creation, content creation from an offline perspective, video, images, all those important stakeholders coming together in a room to then look at, okay, what do we have from a content perspective, and listing everything out. That is the content inventory. Then the content audit is then looking at, okay, all this content that we have, what is working, what is not working, what is outdated, and what needs updating. And then you then look at, okay, when this was it created with the view of a customer journey in mind? So those are the kind of conversations that a content audit brings to the table. And I've been experienced to work in organizations where we've done a content audit where every senior stakeholders, everybody involved with content production, content optimization, content management, come together in a room. And it's not just a one-off meeting. It's a sequence of conversation for you to then continuously add those inventories, like, okay, what content do we have, what content is relevant, and all those kind of things. So that is a content inventory and audit from an end-to-end customer perspective, not just for SEO.
So where would one start with the process? Obviously, it's a process that happens over a period of time.
Yeah.
What's the starting point?
So in my experience of working with clients, what normally triggers a content audit is a website redesign. And some organizations that are very intelligent would then broaden out the scope of that website redesign. Or say, for example, a re-platforming project. That broadens out. So intelligent senior stakeholders, chief marketing officers, marketing directors that I've worked with in the past would then look like, okay, how do we then look at it from an end-to-end perspective? Another thing that triggers it is when another cycle of budget. Say you're trying to forecast performance at the end of the year. You're reviewing the performance of your marketing, and you want to like, okay, how can we do better? How can we get, say, for example, 10% year-on-year growth from that perspective? That's what normally triggers content audit. As I mentioned, you start by looking at your online assets. You first start by looking at the content owners. What I mean by content owners is direct marketing has someone within direct marketing that manages content. Then you then have someone within SEO, for example, content marketers, email marketing, the offline marketing part, the brand. So you bring all those stakeholders in, and then everybody asks that, okay, what content do we have at the moment? You set up like a Excel document or any software solution that gives everybody visibility, and you then list out that, okay, these are all the contents that we have. One thing that I've seen in organization is the structure also determines the process of a content inventory and a content audit. In some situations, you have organizations that are central. What I mean by this is everything is centralized. One particular team manages content production, dissemination, and all that. And then you have the other part that is decentralized, where SEO is responsible for SEO content, email is responsible, everybody does their own thing, extremely decentralized. And then you have a hybrid model where it's centrally led. If it's a global organization, it's global led and then decentralized. Why this is important is because all these elements will determine the quality of your content, and it will determine how often or how effective your content inventory and audit is. I'm going to talk based on my experience of working with different types of organization, multinational, local, large, decentralized, and all that. One problem that I see is the situation where content production and content optimization is void of the customer journey. What I mean by this is, for every piece of content that is created, where does it fit in the overall picture? Because if you have silos within your organization when it comes to content production and optimization, everybody will be doing things disjointedly, and then it becomes difficult to optimize the end-to-end customer journey. What I mean by this is, so when you're looking at a content inventory, look at it from an angle where, like, okay, what are the content we have in our inventory for now that is focused on awareness? So this is like from an acquisition perspective. And then you audit that content. You look like, how effective is it? And then you don't look at those content in isolation. When I say awareness content, I'm talking about content, say television ad, I'm talking about paid advertising, anything that brings awareness about your brand and then brings education about your product. That content, you do an inventory of it and you look at the effectiveness. And then you go to the other side and, okay, what are the content that kind of, after people have been educated, what are the content that engages them? This is important because you need to engage people, you need to communicate your value proposition before you then look at, okay, what are the content that the bucket of content, online, offline, whatever channel, that is grouped that, okay, this content is targeting and aimed, the KPI of this content is like to encourage and nudge people towards conversion. That's another inventory. And then you then look at, okay, what are the content that we are going to use for people that has converted? How do we nudge them to become repeat purchase, repeat customers? That content is different as well. And that content leans heavily on channels like email marketing. And then you then look like, okay, what content do we create to encourage word of mouth? Like if someone is going to recommend a brand, what content would help someone that has heard about a brand from a friend that already knows something based on the referral and the conversation that brand advocate has told that potential customer? What are the content buckets? So that's how you look at your content end to end when you look at a content audit. You don't look at it in isolation of SEO or organic search. So if we then come back to organic search, for example, you have the same mindset of how people do a content audit for organic 10 years ago is what still prevails now. People have seen organization just focus on ranking alone. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with ranking, but how would you choose from a content that ranks well but converts terribly and a content that doesn't rank too well but converts really, really good? So what I'm trying to say is I've seen organizations not pay attention when creating those content to see where they fit in the customer purchase journey. So that's the purpose of content. If when organizations start looking at it in isolation, off channel, then you are having an end-to-end content optimization that is mapped to the customer journey. I was lucky enough to work with a client recently, and not too recent, but what we did was have everybody in the room, from people that are like educational content, people even working closely with email, working closely with direct marketing, and everybody. It was a meeting cadence every week where all the stakeholders were in the room, we're looking at the content, and we were like trying to understand how can we improve. So that's why it's important when you're doing conversion optimization. And when I say conversion optimization, I'm talking about it from a customer experience standpoint. The different maturity level to conversion optimization. A very mature organization that is really, really good with optimization would have someone in optimization look at the content that brings acquisition. That same person will look at the work in collaboration, content that brings engagement, and then email content as well. Because you have a very, very disjointed content production in most organizations. And this is the responsibility of the chief marketing officer or the marketing director to bring all these stakeholders into a room and to facilitate this. But in most instances, it's difficult. Hence why what I recommend to senior stakeholders is to hire a consultant like myself that comes out from outside and has not a internally focused view of the customer journey, but brings like a fresh perspective and can work with these senior stakeholders to facilitate the process of the end-to-end content inventory and audits.
You've talked about the content based on the customer journey or different stages of the customer journey.
Yep.
From your experience, is there a particular preference for a specific type of content in each of those stages? So, for example, written copy versus images versus videos?
That's a good question. So, every organization is different, and every customer segment is also unique in its own way. My recommendation is to listen to the customer. So if the bulk of your high value customers are being encouraged across the journey through a particular type of content, that is the type of content that you should create. I was researching recently about watches, and I stumbled across an individual that his whole business model was based on video content on YouTube. And when the pandemic happened, he was struggling because before the pandemic, all his channels were like offline, face to face, but he had to reevaluate. So in that context, the external environment influenced him, and then he decided that, okay, I'm gonna go all out on YouTube. And that is his main, I've forgotten his name, Nico or something. He deals in luxury watches and expensive watches and things like that. And he just blew up, like close to 1 million or more than 1 million subscribers. So in that context, he used external factors, and he also understood that his target audience, it's a visual thing for them. So he doesn't need text content to sell watches, to sell exotic and expensive watches and things like that. So product and your target audience and what communicates best to them will be good. For example, in an e-commerce store, for example, online store, text is important, but you would tilt more because you're trying to replicate or you're trying to bring the offline experience online to them. So you know straight away that a visual and a video content needs to be top of mind. The quality of your image needs to be really, really good if you're going to get those conversions. So it depends on your target audience. That would determine what content you use and choose. Email in most instances is text-based, but I've seen email campaigns that would then nudge you to watch a video or things like that. So first of all, you need to do a usability testing on your content. So you need to set tasks for your customers, conversion tasks, awareness tasks, educational tasks across your marketing channel, and listen to them, and then understand from doing all those usability testing on your content, you then be able to identify the most effective content for them from an acquisition, engagement, conversion, and retention perspective. Yeah.
From a marketing ROI perspective, we often talk about the importance of word of mouth.
Yeah.
In your experience, is there a particular type of content that drives word of mouth really well, or does that depend on the product, the industry, and I assume the customer as well?
That's a good question. So that's where customer experience comes into play. So it's the experience that people have, the value that they see in your product. So that does not necessarily have anything to do with content. That has a lot to do with the feeling, the value that your customer get from using your product, or the experience they have with interacting with your organization. That creates an impression, and they would then be more likely to recommend or give good recommendation about your brand. So then the type of content that you then have, how shareable is that? And then your brand recall, how easy is it going to be for them to remember that, oh, I bought this product 6 months ago, it was really, really good. I can't remember. But if they remember straight away, how quickly would they go? What channel would they go to be able to share that with their friends? It could be like the name of your website, the name of your brand, or your social media. So that's where you need multiple content types. So they could share, oh, they have a YouTube channel, here's a link to it. Oh, they have the Instagram account, and then from there they can then get links to the purchase path. So yeah, so that's how I see it.
And in your experience, how often should brands do content inventory and audits? Is it something that happens regularly, or?
I would assume the few times I've done content audits has been triggered by website redesign, rebranding, and stuff like that, new product launch. Ideally, each channel owner or each content owner should continuously update the content, review the inventory, identify what's working, what's not working. But ideally, you want to have like a quarterly review from a decentralized perspective of that. And then when you're then setting the budget on a yearly, on an annually basis, that can then come into play. But it needs to be a culture within each content owner. When I say content owner, the person that is responsible for offline content production, image, and everything. As long as you have that central person that is responsible for customer experience and conversion optimization, if they're different, or user experience, those people will be the custodian working with all those different stakeholders. So to answer your question, it should be an ongoing thing, but it should also be something that you review at the end of every year. Like, okay, we're setting our budget for the next year. What is our content inventory? What is working, what is not working? Because if you fail to do it, you'll be spending a lot of your marketing budget, and your target customers will be going through outdated, ineffective content, and it would affect the performance of your conversion and your sales. So a lot of emphasis is placed on the aesthetic, the beautiful website, beautiful content from a layout perspective and design, creativity. But the actual content that communicates value proposition to your customer, those actual content that answers the questions they have before and after they buy your product, or when they have problems with your product, that can even save you money when people that call your customer service will be reduced. So content has a significant role to play. My name is Femi Olajiga. If you're in need of someone to help you with your content inventory and content audit from an end-to-end customer perspective with a focus of increasing conversion and sales and customer retention, reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you. Thank you.